Today was Friday, May 3rd, 2024, the final day of the General Conference of the United Methodist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. I did about as much work preparing for this as I could have, and I still was not nearly smart enough to track everything that developed. I watched all the plenaries that I could, and still there was so much that I didn't understand. But I had a lot of people in the chat that really helped me learn and grow. There's still things that I'm confused about, and I'm not going to talk about them right here, but I will tell you about the developments that happened today. And I started at the very beginning with Bishop Tracy Malone, who is the new president of the Council of Bishops. She preached, and it ended in the band playing Love Train. People all over the world join in, and they were all dancing through the aisles, and they were so excited. And according to a lot of people there, the mood is exuberant. Everybody's feeling like they won the Super Bowl because they did beat the terrible traditionalists and got control of the General Conference. And for more details on that, you can look at previous days reporting. They did this by forcing out or compelling to leave traditionalists in the United States whenever traditionalists realized that liberal progressives were not going to obey the Book of Discipline anymore. They also did this over the voices and protests of Africans who attended this year, and had a press conference yesterday where they announced not only the inequities of even getting there in the first place, but the ways in which their voices had been squelched during the assembly. And that was plain for all to see who participated in this live stream and who watched online. They this morning made several decisions having to do with bishops, where they're appointed. They came to a final decision, although it had kind of already been decided that they were not going to be appointing lots of bishops in areas that are growing dramatically. They had already decided to put two new bishops in Africa, where really, 15 would do better. But they decided yesterday to maintain 5 bishops in each jurisdictional conference in the United States, which they already agreed jurisdictional conferences are racist, and the regionalization plan probably should have wiped out. But hey, use it to maintain more bishops than you need, especially in the Western jurisdiction and Northeastern jurisdiction. They're going to continue to emphasize leadership in areas of cosmopolitan, rich American growth rather than rural African growth. So they made some decisions about that. They had 7 different finance reports. That was what a lot of morning was concerned with. They attempted to connect bishop salaries to the pay of local church pastors and then that was rejected. They ended up adopting all 7 reports all at once. So then they went to lunch. After they came back from lunch, for like 30 minutes, they celebrated the team that put General Conference on, despite the fact that even according to the liberal caucus group, Mainstream UMC, they did not do a good job this year. You would not know that to watch that. Everybody was just so happy with them and clapping. They were smiling so big and giving speeches. And that's while they've already said, we have so much work to do. They decided to take up that much time. And here's a general gripe about the whole General Conference. They had so much work to do that needed serious consideration. And yet they had all these presentations that could be seen outside of conference. They had all these things that could have been done at the tail end after dinner or something. Or it seemed to me and to many others that it intentionally took up a lot of the time that would have been better spent at directing the course of the church for the next 4 years. So anyway, when they got back together, Bishop Palmer was presiding. Then there were 3 different final sexual innovations that they did, or revoking biblical sexuality. They removed the definition of sexual immorality. They still have the word immorality in there, but they took out the definition of sexual immorality. It's not just being gay, but also celibacy and singleness, and fidelity in marriage. For now, it would seem cannot be removed from the pulpit if you cheat on your spouse or if you sleep with someone outside of marriage. That's to my mind quite shameful. I mean, what's taken place is already quite shameful, but that really that was an unforced error right there. And it really shows how worldly their theology of sexuality has become. Then they had a petition immediately afterwards that removed the language about hosting gay weddings and sanctuaries. Now that's okay. And then immediately after that, they had a petition that made clear that pastors can marry or not marry anyone that they want, which sounds great. It sounds like a middle of the road proposition, but in some states in the United States of America, that may open some clergy up to discrimination law if their rule book no longer prohibits such things. So I'm not a legal expert. I can't speak to that. That was just in the chat today, and maybe that's stupid, but that could be a repercussion. But it also doesn't limit clergy on who they will decide to marriage and to marry. And there are a lot of very interesting people out there that want very interesting and not very biblical things regarding what covenant relationships they establish. So you can anticipate that being an issue on down the line. They had another small break. Then Tracy Malone took over, the new president of the Council of Bishops, and there were a series. They had a bunch of other stuff to entertain. So they had this guy that I think looks like Peter Dinklage, Lonnie Chafin, by all accounts, a very intelligent man, tried to get things on the road by referring a bunch of petitions so that there were only 4 or 5 left, and then they ended up. This is something Gary Graves at the beginning of the day talked about. People trying to save time actually costs time. He probably did end up saving a little bit of time, but man, they debated that for a long time. Finally, it got so convoluted and frustrating. Bishop Malone just said, "Hey, do we want to amend the rules?" And didn't even take a vote. Just said, "Does anybody object?" And then amended the rules, and then they just attended upon the 4 or 5. There were 5 last petition items that did not get debated at all. It was just a simple up-down vote after they were presented by their petitions. So there was one for a mandatory apology from all annual conferences, jurisdictional conferences, and the General Conference this evening. They ended up reading it here for sexual violence in the church, and that was a big deal for a lot of people. There was a statement against discriminating against disabled people or people based on gender. There was a fast tracking, there was amending of language of fast tracking clergy that had been kicked out for sexual immorality and allowing them come back in by a certain. There was nothing super substantial there, and there were obviously 2 that I didn't even take notes on, and I've already forgotten. So let me sum up what happened over the last 2 weeks, and it really shouldn't be a surprise. It is a little surprise. I thought that they would give a few like nuggets to conservatives, but they didn't. There was pretty much nothing that came before the body of the plenary that was recognizably biblical. That would feel like someone read their Bible and then came to General Conference proposing something. There wasn't anything dealing with salvation, sin, damnation, prayer, the persecuted church, ministry with the poor, spreading the gospel. I didn't see anything like that. I saw a lot of virtue signaling to cultural leftism and progressivism. I'm not saying there wasn't anything there. I did note that buried in one of the consent calendars was a pronouncement against persecution of Christians in India, which is great. But there is no but. I think that that's great. But when you look at what came before the floor in plenary, all the stuff that was amended, that was adopted, that was argued explicitly, was all around progressivism and cultural leftism. So the key issues that I know a lot of people cared about were abortion, local license pastor voting rules, human sexuality, regionalization, Israel, and climate change. And in every single one of those categories, there was a move leftward, and some of them very far leftward. But there was nothing for conservatives to look at and go, oh man, this is great. And which is why a lot of bishops have put out statements now saying, oh, don't worry about what happens at General Conference. You're going to be able to do what you want to do. And so in the chat today, someone asked how much loss is there going to be in the United Methodist Church over the coming years. And it really depends on how many people hear about this. But I think if most people in local churches learn about this cultural takeover, this ideological takeover, I can't imagine that the United Methodist Church will have any more than half of its strength that it has now in 4 years. I'll just be amazed. I'll be amazed if the Africans decide to stick with them, because they've made it clear that no matter what someone else says, they're going to do what they want, the progressives in America. there's going to be a lot more fallout from this. And I think they could have been gracious. I think they could have tried to hand the baton to Africa and acknowledge their ascent. They chose not to. They chose to hold on to everything and give nothing away. So, there continued questions, especially around jurisdictions. Are they going to have the integrity to end that system that is based in like overt racism and is preserving a lot of American clout that really can't be justified at this point? Or are they going to allow themselves to be turned into a region as the regional plan determined, regionalization plan advocated? And then also, just how does this continue to be a global body? They pushed a lot of propaganda on the front end saying, we can still be in good connection with each other. We can still be a church that holds fast to doctrine and a book of discipline that holds us together. So how much of that was just fantasy, and then how real is that? That's what's going to be put to the test now. And of course, regionalization is not going to be fully instantiated for a couple of years between now and over the course of the next year and a half. They're going to be sending it out to every annual conference for a vote for ratification. And one of the main leaders of mainstream UMC, David Livingston, got on the floor of plenary near the end just today and said he is fully confident it's going to pass. And maybe he's confident because he knows the vast majority of African United Methodists are leaving between now and then. I think that's widely anticipated, so that should make everybody really sad. Anyway, I'm sure there's a lot more to be said, but having watched all day, that's my basic thoughts about the day. I hope they're useful to you.